Okay, welcome to this PPR tutorial on price elasticity of demand. So play the video obviously and then pause to answer the questions, and then at the end if you got any incorrect you can repeat till you get all the questions correctly. First question, define PED please. Pause. Okay, so you should have that PED measures the responsiveness of quantity demanded of a good or service to a change in price. Second thing that's essential to know for PED is the formula. Pause. So you should have that it is the percentage change in quantity demanded over the percentage change in price. Okay, so remember you should always Q before you P. So the Q, quantity demanded, goes on top of the price. Okay. You should also know what the coefficient, i.e. the answer, is always. So hopefully in your head you're able to tell me that the coefficient is always negative. Okay, and it's always negative because there's an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. Okay, as the price of a product goes up, the quantity demanded that consumers have decreases. Okay, so next thing I would like you to pause the video and identify is all the different possible coefficients and what kind of elasticities they have. So go from 0 to less than 1 to 1 to greater than 1 to infinity, and see if you can identify what the different elasticities are, please. Pause. Okay, so hopefully you've got that 0 was perfectly inelastic. You have got less than 1 is inelastic. Now bear in mind this is the absolute number. Okay, we're not talking about the negative. Just disregard the negative sign for now. So if the number itself, which it will always be, is negative, but if the number itself is 0.2, for example, that makes it inelastic. If it's 0.99999, that's still inelastic. Okay, so just disregard the negative sign for now. If the answer is 1, albeit minus 1, that makes it unitary. So that means that the percentage change in price has corresponded with the exact same percentage change in quantity demanded. Greater than 1 makes it elastic. Again, forget about the negative sign. So if the number is 2, if the number is 5, if the number is 1,000, that makes it elastic, albeit it's a minus number. And if the answer is infinity, that makes it perfectly elastic. So now what we'd like you to do is try and draw all the curves. So what the demand curves look like for each of these different elasticities. Please pause the video. So hopefully you've got the following diagrams. So one tip to remember is that inelastic curves look like an I, so they're very vertical, and elastic curves are very flat. Okay, they look like an E. Okay, if you really put a line at the top of the curves, they would look like capital E's. Okay, and then obviously the unitary one is the shape of a rectangular hyperbola. It's sort of like a quarter of a circle. Okay, so it's important that you know all them curves. It's also important that you can recall the determinants of PED. So what makes some products elastic and what makes other products inelastic. So see if you can recall all the determinants of PED, please. Pause. So hopefully you've got P in the bath. Okay, that's your acronym. You should never P in the bath. So the determinants are P, proportion of income spent. So a quick explanation is if something forms a large proportion of your income, i.e. it's very expensive, it will have an elastic demand. Okay, and if something forms a very small proportion of your income, it will not have a big response in demand if its price increases. So it will be inelastic. So think, for example, compare two products. A car, for example, would form a very high proportion of someone's income. If the price of it increased by 50%, you would probably see a greater than 50% change or fall, I should say, in the demand for cars. Whereas if the price of chewing gum increased by 50%, so it went from 50p to 75p, for example, you probably wouldn't see a greater than a 50% decrease in the amount of people that consume it because it forms a small proportion of their income. Next is necessities versus luxuries. Necessities have inelastic demand because they're necessities. People need to buy them. So think about foods, think about petrol for cars. People need to buy them no matter what. So if the price goes up, they will demand it. And obviously luxury goods are a bit like the car in the previous example. They will have an elastic demand. It's also important to remember how you define a product. So for example, and this one obviously links to A as well, the availability of substitutes, so we can kind of tick both off on one example. If we define a product as a very generic explanation of the product, like bread, okay, bread obviously from the previous example is a necessity, so therefore it has a fairly inelastic demand, okay. However, if you define the product as a brand, so this is whenever the availability substitutes comes in, if you define it as Hovis brown bread, for example, that will have a more elastic demand because of the substitutes available. So for example, Hovis white bread, Kingsmill bread, Warburton's bread, okay, so there's more substitutes, and if there is more substitutes, that makes the product more elastic. Again, B stands for brand loyalty. This applies maybe to things like coffee or sweets, for example. So if people like a particular product, they will spend money on it no matter what happens to price. So if there's a strong brand loyalty with a product, the price will go up, people will still buy it. That makes it an inelastic product. T, time. If you have run out of time to buy a product, so say for example you drive a car and you've run out of petrol, the nearest petrol station you'll have to call in, and if the price is very expensive and the price rises, you will pay for the petrol no matter what, because you have to. If you had more time, so you realised that you were running low on petrol, you could obviously go to a cheaper alternative petrol station where you could pay a lower price. So if you have more time, you have a more elastic demand. And the last one, habit forming goods. Certain products have habitual consumption, so obviously things like cigarettes, alcohol, sugary drinks, because people become addicted to them, even if the price rises, demand will still stay fairly high because of the inelastic demand and the addiction that they have. Okay, so that is everything for PED. Obviously, as I say before, you can save, screenshot your phone or computer now, so you've got everything in one place, and you can repeat the video until you answer all the questions correctly. Thank you.